House Office of Public Engagement, Mr. John Bisignano. Please go ahead, sir.
Good evening, folks. I'm John Bisignano at the White House Office of Public Engagement. Thank you all so much for hopping on this call. I wanted to first say this call will be recorded, and the call is not an open press call, is not meant for press attribution. Today we wanted to give you all a chance to hear from the President to provide information about the P5+1 nuclear deal with Iran. I wanted to thank a great number of groups that have helped get the word out about this call, including Move On members, OFA, the Truman Project, Credo Action, Win Without War, Plowshares Fund, Americans United for Change, and many more. It's now my pleasure to introduce the President of the United States, Barack Obama.
Hey, everybody. Hope folks are having a good summer and staying cool. I really appreciate everybody taking the time to join this call. And if you guys will bear with me, I want to just talk a little bit about not only the Iran nuclear deal, but also the stakes involved as we move forward to implement it. A lot of the people on the line were active in our campaign back in 2008. A lot of people were active in the response to the Iraq War and the decisions that led us into what ended up being an enormous strategic mistake for the United States. And when I was running, obviously foreign policy was a major topic, and there were a couple of basic principles that I laid out. I said that it was important for us not only to end the war in Iraq, but end the mindset that got us into war. I said that we should never fear, from a position of strength, to try to find diplomatic solutions to big foreign policy challenges. I said that I would be unequivocal in my support for the security of the State of Israel, our greatest ally in the region. And I said that one of my top foreign policy priorities was to make sure that we refocused attention on the non-proliferation of weapons of mass destruction, particularly nuclear weapons. The work that we've done over the last 7 years has touched on all these issues, but nowhere have all these issues come together more forcefully than the historic deal that was recently announced between Iran and an entire international community that we systematically mobilized to bring them to the table and to make sure that Iran does not get a nuclear weapon. Many of you obviously have been following the issue in the press, but I just want to lay out for you why this deal is so important and why I am absolutely convinced that this is not just the best of a series of bad alternatives, but actually is a very good deal that we should be proud of and that achieves critical security objectives, not just for the United States, but for our allies and the world, including the State of Israel. Now, let me just give you a rough outline of what exactly this deal does. But this deal cuts off the four main pathways for Iran to get a nuclear weapon. For the first 10 years, it basically drastically restricts Iran's nuclear program so that we know exactly what they're doing at all times. Shuts down underground facilities that might otherwise have not been reached. Converts a facility that might have been used for plutonium production so that we are confident it cannot be used for the production of nuclear materials. Requires Iran to reduce by 98% its stockpiles of enriched uranium, and set up an unprecedented verification and inspection regime that allows us 24/7 coverage of all their declared nuclear facilities and their entire production line, from uranium mines to the production of the centrifuges that are required to enrich uranium, all the way to the end point. For an additional 5 years, it requires Iran to ship out all its stockpiles, and throughout this period greatly restricts the research and development that Iran can do around nuclear power. And for years to come after that, it subjects Iran to the most rigorous inspection regime in history. Iran, under this agreement, can never get a nuclear weapon. It's not permitted to ever weaponize nuclear power. And the inspection and verification mechanisms that have been put in place will continue long after not only I've been president, but after the next president's been president, and the president after that's been president. In exchange for that, we are removing sanctions that we systematically stitched together with the help of our allies. So Iran will get access to dollars that have been frozen overseas. But partly because of the application of our sanctions, Iran's economy has contracted badly. They've been suffering essentially a depression because of these sanctions. And it will take till about 2022, even with sanctions relief, for them to get back to where they would have been had there never been sanctions at all. Now, you will hear a lot of arguments out there about why this is a quote-unquote bad deal from people who, frankly, would be opposed to any deal with Iran. I'm just going to knock out a couple of them that you may be hearing, partly from the $20 million that's being spent lobbying against the bill on TV ads that are already running, partly from some of the same columnists and former administration officials that were responsible for us getting into the Iraq War and were making these exact same claims back in 2002 or 2003 with respect to Iraq. So, number one, you'll hear the deal that, well, Iran's going to cheat. It is possible, because this deal is not based on trust, but rather based on verification. And the Iranian regime is, in fact, a brutal theocracy that is anti-American, anti-Israel, and denies the Holocaust, and supports terrorist proxies, and has been involved in destabilizing activities throughout the region, that they might try to cheat. But because of this deal, we are absolutely certain to be able to catch them more effectively than without a deal. The costs of them cheating become extraordinarily high. And we've set up a system in which, if they were caught cheating, we can unilaterally reimpose the entire regime of sanctions that are currently in place, and Iran's economy would go back into the tank. You will hear that the inspectors may not get in there fast enough to catch them cheating, except the way this thing is set up, we have the power to override any objections that Iran may have about access to any sites, declared or undeclared. And if they did not cooperate, once again, we're in a position to put sanctions back in place. So the bottom line is that during the duration of this agreement, it is extraordinarily difficult for Iran to cheat. We will almost certainly catch them quickly, and we are able to reimpose penalties on them. You'll hear arguments that say, well, the deal is good for the first 15 years, but after 15 years, they're going to have all these centrifuges, and now they are going to be in a position to kick out all the inspectors, cheat, and potentially break out for the bomb. It is true that after 15 years, they are able to have a peaceful nuclear program, and because of the nature of peaceful nuclear programs, they are going to have greater enrichment capacity than they do right now. The problem with that logic, though, is that if we don't have a deal, they'll have that exact same breakout capacity 6 months from now or 9 months from now or a year from now. So it's kind of hard to argue that somehow we're better off in a situation in which in 6 months we might have to resort to force in order to prevent Iran from getting nuclear weapon, rather than 15 years from now, after we have established a verification and inspection regime and we know everything we need to know about the Iranian nuclear program. Any president will be in a much better position, if they have to take military action to prevent Iran from getting. You'll hear that the money that they're getting is so significant that Iran will be able to engage in greater terrorism and destabilizing activities in the region. There's no doubt that some of the money they get will probably be used for military purposes, but keep in mind that Iran's military budget is $15 billion. Ours is well over $500 billion. The military budget of our Gulf allies is $150 billion, or 10 times that of Iran's. We are going to be able to deter Iran from attacking any of our friends and allies through conventional forces. The danger is if they get a nuclear weapon, which is exactly what this deal prevents. The third thing that you may hear is that this in some ways legitimizes Iran and so prevents us from counteracting the work that they do in terms of financing or arming Hezbollah. In fact, there's nothing in this deal that prevents us from forcefully confronting Iran on non-nuclear behavior that is contrary to our interests or the interests of our allies. So, for example, we will continue to be able, under this agreement, to interdict and prevent Iran from arming Hezbollah under international legal authorities. That doesn't go away. Now, one of the things that we do have to work on is improving the capacity of our friends and allies in the region, improving our intelligence and interdiction, because frankly, Iran has been able to get around many of these international prohibitions, even while they've been in place. But the problem there is not because somehow this deal eliminates our legal authorities. The problem is that we've got up our game, and that's the cooperation that we are prepared to engage in with our allies in the region. So the bottom line is this. Every argument that has been put forward against this deal is either inaccurate or presupposes that what we should be doing, if we were going to negotiate, is to get a deal in which Iran completely forgoes any ability to engage in even peaceful nuclear power. And in the world of our dreams, that would be preferable. But in the real world, there's no expert on Iran or foreign policy who would suggest that Iran, which is fiercely proud, would have agreed to that. In the real world, this is a deal that gets the job done. And if you hear people say that we should have gotten a better deal, you have to ask them, what exactly do you mean? If what they mean is that Iran should have completely eliminated any claim to peaceful nuclear power, then what you have to say to them is that Iran would not do that, and the only way to achieve that effectively